I was surprised.
Copley, team number 3.
Copley!
For the 23rd consecutive year, Emmy Award-winning Academic Challenge. Brought to you by the Illuminating Company and by Ohio Edison. And now, ladies and gentlemen, here's Don Webster.
Good luck, Thank you very much. Hi again, everybody. Welcome to Academic Challenge, where teams test their wits against each other and also try their luck with our electronic challenge board. And now, teams, listen carefully as Paul lists tonight's categories.
Thanks, Don. The categories in our first electronic challenge round will be history, literature, math, sports, energy, trivia, Ohio, what's missing, and the right number.
Now listen closely as Paul explains the rules for the opening round.
In this round, each team will have 6 questions, and each correct answer earns 10 points. No penalties in this round.
Thank you, Paul. Let's get underway now with team number 1 from Wickliffe, Steve Wickizer, Greg Marn, and Scott Tennant. Nice to have you with us. And Greg, you being the captain, anytime now. Just stop that board from flashing. We'll see what the first category will be. We go to literature, first of all. Opening round, and here we go. In Kipling's poem, On the Road to Mandalay, dawn comes up like what very noisy atmospheric phenomena that rattles the skies?
Lightning.
No, thunder. When Noah Webster compiled his American dictionary, he removed what letter from the inside of such British words as color and honor?
U.
Right. Handsome and young are 2 words that Shakespeare uses to describe Cassio, a character in what tragedy about a Moor of Venice whose jealousy leads him to strangle his wife, Desdemona?
Merchant of Venice.
I needed Othello. If a student of literature were in need of a physical examination, he might visit Dr. Watson, loyal friend of what fictional detective created by Arthur Conan Doyle?
Sherlock Holmes.
That's the one. Henrik Ibsen wrote a very serious play about Nora Helmer. Nevertheless, he gave the play what title that has a child's plaything in it?
The Dollhouse.
A Doll's House. The best-known science fiction book by Frank L. Herbert has what title suggesting a shifting mound of sand?
Dune.
Dune is right. And the end of the first round, 40 points for Wickliffe. Now let's go over and meet everyone from Magnificat in Rocky River. Julie White, Amy Somrak, and Elizabeth Moore. And Amy, as Greg did now, just push the button, and we'll find out which category you get underway with. The right number this time. All right. Question's all about numbers, of course, and here's the first. Had the evil queen in Snow White broken her looking glass, she might expect how many years of bad luck?
7.
Right. The Greek alphabet has how many letters? 2 fewer than the English alphabet.
24.
Okay. The title of a mystery novel by Agatha Christie mentions what number of little Indians?
10.
Mm-hmm. As our nation's most populous state, California is entitled to how many seats in the House of Representatives? 5 fewer than the number of stars on the U.S. flag.
45.
That's it. According to the Bible, when Noah got orders to build the ark, he was how old? A number equal to 30 score.
600.
That's right. An old tune tells us that the night has 1,000 eyes. But what number of eyes was the mythological giant Argus supposed to have had?
100.
100, and you got them all. Good start. 60 points for Magnificat. Now, let's go over and meet our group from Copley, Ohio. John Cammons, Melanie Barton, and Bill Levinson. And Melanie, being the captain, it's up to you now to find out which category it's going to be. Anytime you're ready, push the stop button. We'll see what we end up with. Okay, history. Question number 1. The Underground Railroad for runaway slaves was fostered in Pennsylvania by what still active pacifist religious group whose name suggests earth tremors?
The Quakers.
Right. To settle a dispute between small and large states, the authors of the Constitution created what type of legislature having 2 bodies or houses?
Bicameral.
Right. Deborah Sampson Gannett, enlisted under a man's name. She was the only female soldier known to have participated in what last major battle of the Revolutionary War in 1781?
Yorktown.
Yorktown is right. Several U.S. presidents have had Bachelor of Arts degrees, but only what predecessor of Lincoln's had a bachelor's degree and remained a bachelor as well?
Buchanan.
That's right. Princeton University Press has recently published the complete correspondence between Franklin D. Roosevelt and what British wartime prime minister?
Winston Churchill.
That's it. All politicians like to think of themselves as champs, but early in the century, a man actually called Champ Clark held what highest post in the U.S. House of Representatives?
Speaker of the House.
That's exactly right, and you too got them all. 60 points for Clark. We'll be right back with our very fast lightning round in just a minute or two. But first of all, teams, remember, at the end of tonight's match, we'll check the ladder on our Super Bowl scoreboard. At the end of the season, the 3 teams with the top scores will join us for an Academic Challenge Super Bowl. So far, the highest point totals have been these, and they are high. Western Reserve in 3rd place with 495, Lakeview 535, and University Schools 655 points. We'll be back after this for Ohio Edison and the Illuminating Company.
Mackey is now a writer for the National Safety Council. The Illuminating Company and Ohio Edison applaud the scholars of yesterday and today because education, like electricity, is the power of the future.
Before we continue with more questions, let's have a look at tonight's schools. Wickliffe High School is home to 700 students, including hearing-impaired young people from throughout the region enrolled in a specialized program. Now in its 20th season as Academic Challenge Advisor, J. Patrick Penrod teaches speech, drama, and English. Wickliffe's a cappella choir consistently earns superior ratings in annual competitions and includes smaller ensembles that perform at community functions. Magnificat High School in Rocky River was one of just 3 Ohio schools recognized by the U.S. Department of Education among 65 exemplary private schools nationwide. Chemistry teacher Elizabeth Dabrowski is now in her 8th season as Academic Challenge Advisor. The all-girls school has an enrollment of 985, and over 95% of its graduates go on to higher education. Copley High School, which serves students from Copley and Fairlawn near Akron, has nearly 800 students in grades 9 through 12. Team co-advisors Alice Rote, who teaches English, and Sue Carosa, who teaches history and English, says Copley students continue to rank above both state and national norms on both the SAT and ACT tests. 55% of the Copley faculty have master's degrees and an average of 15 years teaching experience. And about 60% of Copley graduates go on to 4-year colleges, while about 15% pursue technical careers. Now it's time for the lightning round. So, Paul, what are the rules?
All 3 teams will compete in a visual free-for-all lasting 1 minute. The first team to ring its bell for each item will be recognized. The right answer gets you 10 points, but we'll take away 10 for incorrect answers or failure to reply.
Thank you, Paul. You know, the word great is entrenched in modern vocabularies. Please identify these persons, places, and things, all connected in some way with the word great. Check your monitors, fingers on the buzzers, teams, and here is number 1. What are we looking for? All right, Copley.
Magna Carta.
That is it. The author, Magnificat.
F. Scott Fitzgerald.
Okay, the title means great soul. And we are looking to Copley.
Mahatma.
That is it. The Great Barrier Reef is off the coast of this continent. There's an easy one, Copley.
Australia.
That's it. The constellation, also called the Great Bears, Wickliffe.
Big Dipper.
No, we needed Ursa Major. Now, a title meaning great house refers to the kings of ancient Egypt, Wickliffe.
Pharaohs.
Right? The hero of great expectations, Copley.
Pip.
Right? The largest of the 5 Great Lakes, Wickliffe.
Superior.
Okay, the 18th century Russian empress called the Great, Copley.
Alexander.
No, Catherine II. The primate that is the largest of the great apes is called Magnificat.
Gorilla.
Right? I am the greatest, said this boxing champ, Wickliffe.
Muhammad Ali.
And finally, a comic strip that honors the great pumpkin is Copley.
Peanuts.
And that's the end of the round. Let's remind you once again that at the end of the season, the 3 teams with the highest scores will be back to compete with each other for some very impressive prizes. The top 3 teams at the end of the season will each receive a computer. Computer prizes are provided by Apple Computer Incorporated and Holcomb's Educational Materials. Today, there are more apples in schools than any other computer, which may be just the best reason to buy an Apple for home. There may never be a better time. In addition to their Apple computer, the winner of our Super Bowl program will also receive a very special championship trophy. We'll be right back after this for the Energy Makers. Let's recap now with the lightning round did for the scores for our teams, and then it's back to our electronic challenge board. Paul?
In this round, each question is worth 20 points. But now you may also lose 20 points for incorrect answers or 10 points for failure to reply. Any team answering all 8 questions correctly will gain 25 bonus points. The categories in this electronic challenge round will be history, literature, says who, science, associations, potluck, famous men and women, Where in the World, and Letter Perfect.
And as we did in round number one, it is back to each team one at a time. Greg, you are first from Wickliffe, so anytime you're ready, just push that button and we'll find out what category it's going to be for you. All right, let's go with famous men and women. First question. Although he efficiently kept the sea lanes clear, Coast Guard Admiral Edward Smith was given what cold nickname identifying the mast that sank the Titanic?
Iceberg.
That's it. J. Rockefeller and William Armstrong are both U.S. senators, and according to the Chinese calendar, both were born in the year of what large bull-like animal that is often teamed with a yoke?
Ox.
That's it. Convicted of embezzling and confined to the Ohio State Penitentiary until 1901 was what American writer whose real name was William Sidney Porter? I heard it in the audience. I'm glad you didn't. Oh, Henry. Students who memorize U.S. presidents by number have an easy time with number 10 because he's what man whose name, like 10, begins with the letter T?
Tyler.
That's it. After finding spiritual peace as a monk, what 19th century Austrian crossbred garden peas and so discovered fundamental laws of genetics?
Gregor Mendel.
That's it. The theory that the value of a commodity depends upon the labor expended on it is part of what 18th century book about economics by Adam Smith? Answer, Greg. Gonna have to tell you. Go ahead if you have.
Principles of Economics.
No, The Wealth of Nations. If you changed a $100 bill into tens, you'd be exchanging one picture of Benjamin Franklin for 10 pictures of what first Secretary of the Treasury?
Alexander Hamilton.
That's it. In 1857, the U.S. Supreme Court issued a controversial ruling that upheld the property rights of slave owners, a decision generally named for what slave who was an issue in that case?
Dred Scott.
Is absolutely right. And you wrap up your round now with 150 points. Okay, going into their round now, Magnificat has 80 points, and Amy, once again, just push the button. We'll find out what category it's going to be. And we end up with pot luck, which is just, as indicated, can be just about anything here. It was not until 1902 that the U.S. government permanently established what bureau that surveys the national population every 10 years?
Census Bureau.
Right? As if it weren't bad enough to be ground up for hamburger, research shows that cows are the chief victims of what sort of bat that will suck blood from animals?
Vampire.
That's it. The Italian town of Alassio is famous among florists for its cultivation of what purple flowers that are sometimes linked with the adjective shrinking?
Violet.
Right.
A new theater piece. Although the month of August was named for the autumnal equinox.
March.
No, autumnal, September. As you might expect, the Wyoming town of Newcastle was founded for the mining of what same substance for which Newcastle in England is famous? Answer or let it go, Amy?
Pass.
All right, it is coal. One of the major cattle-raising countries in the world is what large South American country that fought Great Britain in the Falkland Islands War?
Argentina.
That's right. There was a 1960s musical called Half a Sixpence, but what equivalent of Half a Sixpence titles a Kurt Weill Bertolt Brecht opera that includes the song Mac the Knife?
Pass.
Okay, it was really kind of a simple math question. Half a sixpence ended up being a 3-penny opera, so that's what we were looking for. And a good round for you, Magnificat. You wrap it up with 140 points. Okay, let's go over to Copley now and Melanie Barton. Let's see what it's going to be for you, Melanie. Just push that stop button, and we end up with what? Right, which one is pot luck, so we'll have to do it again. Okay. And this time round, push the stop button again, we end up with associations. Question number 1. David Bushnell and Robert Fulton are both associated with the development of what type of naval craft that the Germans called U-boats?
Steamboat.
A what?
Steamboat.
No, submarine. Arc, quadrant, and sector are each part of what geometric two-dimensional figure whose other parts include diameter, radius, and circumference?
Circle.
Right. Without a hammer, key, and pedal, it would be impossible to construct what musical instrument played by such masters as Vladimir Horowitz and Van Cliburn?
Piano.
That's right. Model, dancer, and first lady are descriptions that fit into the past of what wife of our 38th president who served between Nixon and Carter?
Ford.
Right. In ancient times, both Damascus and Toledo were noted for the quality of their weapons made from what alloy of iron and carbon and closely associated with Andrew Carnegie?
Steel.
Is it? What pirate captain from Peter Pan would recognize a shank, barb, and point as making up the bodily attachment that gave him his name?
Captain Hook.
Hook. Henri Christophe created the odd titles Duke of Marmalade and Duchess of Lemonade when he ruled what French-speaking Caribbean nation until recently ruled by the Duvaliers? Its capital is Port-au-Prince.
Haiti.
Is it? You would attribute the literary works Common Sense and Rights of Man to what colonial pamphleteer whose words intensified American demands for freedom?
Thomas Paine.
Thomas Paine is it. And after your round, 220 points. We'll be back with a time capsule round right after this message from the Illuminating Company in Ohio Edison.
Students appearing on tonight's show will receive a photograph of their team as they appear on the show and also a special Academic Challenge T-shirt.
Welcome back to Academic Challenge. While we recap our team scores on your screen now, Paul will explain the upcoming time capsule round.
We now have a special round of two-part video questions. Each pair of questions is keyed to a clip from a historical newsreel. Teams will be in direct competition. Each part of the two-part question is worth 10 points, and there is a 10-point penalty for incorrect answers. Don't forget to hold your buzzer down if you wish to answer.
And let's have a look now at time capsule number 1. Among the crises endured by President Lyndon Johnson were these 1967 riots, which devastated the downtown area of what Great Lakes city whose current mayor is Coleman Young? Magnificat.
Detroit.
That's right. Now, the second question. During the Detroit riots, President Johnson's personal representative on the scene was Cyrus Vance, who was appointed 10 years later to what senior cabinet post? Copley.
Secretary of State.
That is it. Now let's have a look at time capsule number 2 tonight. Back in 1938, Franklin Roosevelt addressed a group of very old Civil War veterans. They had gathered to mark the 75th anniversary of what Pennsylvania battle, often cited as a turning point, Wickliffe?
Gettysburg.
That is right. And General U.S. Grant was only one of 5 Union Army veterans who later became President of the United States. Please name one of the other 4. Magnificat.
James Garfield.
Garfield, right. Hayes or Harrison or McKinley. Now, let's have a look at our third video tonight. Nylon stockings were not sold to the public until 1940. In previous centuries, high fashion stockings were usually made from what thread spun by Magnificat?
Silk.
Silk is right. Nylon is a completely synthetic fiber. The chemical substances used to make nylon include what element that has the atomic number 7 and constitutes most of Earth's atmosphere? Wickliffe.
Nitrogen.
Nitrogen is right, and that's the end of that round. We'll be back with our final grab bag right after this message for Ohio Edison and the Illuminating Company. Now the teams face their final competition as we move along to our grab bag. But first of all, let's recap the scores. And first of all, Wickliffe has 170 points. Magnificat from Rocky River has the same, 170. And Copley is currently in the lead with 230. In the grab bag, however, teams gain 20%, or 20 points, I should say, for each correct answer. Miss or fail to answer, 20 points are deducted. So we can have big swings in just a couple of minutes. Here we go. Final round. Westminster Abbey is in London, but the Abbey Theatre is the center for drama in what capital of the Irish Republic? Magnificat.
Dublin.
That's it. In 1965, the U.S. launched a communication satellite known by what 2-word name? Copley.
Sputnik.
Early Bird. The current leader of the United States Senate is a Kansas Republican with what last name?
Dole.
Dole is right. Any tree whose leaves fall from its branches each year is referred to as retrograde, deciduous, Magnificat.
Deciduous.
Right. An Allied plan to deceive the Germans as to the target of the D-Day invasion had what Q initialed name that is a synonym for the element mercury? Magnificat.
HG.
No, I need the synonym, and it is quicksilver. Many women still keep their old dolls from childhood, but for a doll to be classified as antique, it must be how old? The equivalent of 75 years. Copley.
75.
That's it. The New Hampshire rock formation called the Great Stone Face is near what lake whose name suggests a side view of a human head? Wickliffe.
Profile.
Right. The autumn of 1986 saw the posthumous premiere of Queenie Pie, the last major work of what black composer and bandleader who was born in Washington and nicknamed Duke? Wickliffe.
Ellington.
Ellington is right. New Mexico's Maxwell land grant, probably the largest U.S. tract ever owned by one man, was 40 miles square, which is the equivalent of how many square miles? Wickliffe.
1,600.
That's it. Although at least 10 Americans have won the Nobel Prize for Literature, the only American woman on that list was what author of The Good Earth? Copley.
Pearl S. Buck.
Right. Julian Green has given the title God's Fool to his recent biography of what 13th century Italian saint who supposedly preached to birds? Magnificat.
St. Anthony.
St. Francis. The statement that the planets move in orbits which are elliptical is one of Newton's laws, Maxwell's laws, or Kepler's laws? Wickliffe.
Kepler's laws.
That's it. Any writer often described ancient writers often describe the god Mercury as wing-footed, but they use the term limping to refer to what lame god of the forge? Magnificat.
Hermes.
No, Hephaestus or Vulcan. 5 members of today's Congress were once members of what government corps begun in 1961 to help underdeveloped countries? Magnificat.
Peace Corps.
Right. Benjamin Franklin had many firsts to his credit, including the importation into America of what kind of fixture in which Jean-Paul Marat was stabbed? Wickliffe.
Bathtub.
Is it. A forthcoming U.S. postage stamp will honor the 75th anniversary of what female youth organization founded by Juliette Lowe? Copley?
Girl Scouts.
Right. A gene that shows no effect when in the presence of its dominant allele is... Wickliffe?
Recessive.
Recessive is right. What is the tangent of a 315-degree angle? Copley?
-1.
Right. If the Cookie Monster from Sesame Street was a favorite opera, it's probably what Engelbert Humperdinck work that features a delicious gingerbread house? Copley?
Hansel and Gretel.
That's it. A congressional act limiting the political activities of federal employees was passed in 1939. This act has what name that suggests what chicks do when they break through their shells? Wickliffe.
Hatch.
Hatch Act. In Ray Bradbury's story, Fahrenheit 451, one of the books that is banned and burned is what Dickens novel that includes the character Mr. Micawber? Looking for David Copperfield. When Charles I of Spain became Charles V of Austria, his life became 5 times more complicated because he was also ruler of what loosely defined European empire that had been founded, Wickliffe.
Holy Roman.
That's the one. In February of 1944, the British Royal Air Force bombed a Nazi Gestapo prison in a raid codenamed for what biblical city whose walls were leveled by Joshua's forces? Wickliffe.
Jericho.
Is it? If you were to follow the Volga boatman to the mouth of his river, you'd be in what inland sea that is actually the world's largest lake? Wickliffe.
Caspian.
Is that right? Several recent presidents have proposed combining the Department of Labor with what other cabinet department now headed by Malcolm? All right, that's our final buzzer. That's the end of the game. Now, let's have a look at our final score. First of all, in third place, Magnificat with 170 points. In second place, Copley, 310. And our winner tonight with 390 points, Wickliffe High School. Now, let's take a quick look at our Super Bowl scoreboard. And as we have a look at our scoreboard, we'll see if tonight's winner has a big enough score to win a place for itself on the ladder. Did they do it? Well, they did not, because look at those numbers. Western Reserve still at 495, Lakeview 535, and University Schools 655. Next week's academic challengers will be from Cleveland East High School, Buckeye of Medina, and Warren's Champion High School. We hope that you'll be with us then. This is Don Webster. See you next week at the same time.
Academic Challenge has been brought to you by Ohio Edison and by the Illuminating Company.